Alrighty, folks. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is John Theodore. I've been trying to do daily upload videos and do stuff, some of these talking head videos and things like that to fill in some gaps on my channel when I don't have a race to upload. I actually, unfortunately, missed my video yesterday, so I ended up not actually completing my goal that I set at the beginning of the month to upload one video per day. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Today, though, for today's video, I wanted to revisit, um, probably for the last time at least, as far as me making a dedicated video about this. I think this is actually the first dedicated video I've made on the subject. But I wanted to, now that some time has passed, talk a little bit about the finish of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the conclusion of the Formula One season. And I want to be clear about a couple things first. Number one, and the most important piece, Max Verstappen is a deserving Formula One champion. I don't want to take anything away from the accomplishments that he did this season. He is absolutely a deserving champion. And I think that it's a shame that the way in which the championship race ultimately resolved has left such a bitter taste in a lot of folks' mouth. Um, Verstappen is an amazing driver, absolutely a deserving champion, and a great champion for the sport, motorsport. And I look forward to, you know, watching him defend his title next season. Um, I actually don't remember if I mentioned this. Oh, yes, point two. I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan. I've got two driver. When I do analysis and things like that, I do try to keep my personal biases and preferences for drivers out of that analysis. But it's, if I'm being honest, that as a race fan and as a Formula One fan, when I'm watching, there are two drivers on the F1 grid that I root for and that I have a vested interest in, and that's Lewis Hamilton and Daniel Ricciardo. So I do have a bias in terms of who I was actually rooting for to win the F1 title this year. Now then, getting into the analysis of events of what happened and where I think there were some things that I've seen folks say that I want to clear up on. The first one is, and this really boils down to, is that I've seen a lot of folks commenting negatively about Mercedes' strategy, criticizing them for being too conservative at two key moments in the race. One was the virtual safety car, and the other was the full safety car at the end of the race. And I just want to talk briefly about those two incidents, Mercedes calls that they made, the information that they had available at the time, and then what happened to ultimately make their final call the wrong call. And I'm going to use an analogy to hopefully articulate the issue that I have with that end of race call. So the first call that I want to cover is the virtual safety car. There was a lot of criticism of Mercedes at the time and post-race, criticizing them for making the decision to keep Lewis Hamilton out on track to preserve track position. Hamilton even keyed back over the radio at the time to his team, asking why they hadn't pit. The thing is that as that played out, that proved out to be the correct strategy in multiple ways. And it wasn't just because Hamilton ended up holding up the track position at the time, but it was also because since Lewis Hamilton was able to take care of those tires and make those tires last for the entire duration of the race, it actually netted a gain in time on the track. So it actually ended up being time-wise the correct call. Yes, Max Verstappen initially, for the duration of that run, was faster than Lewis Hamilton, but as his tires wore, the gap changed. And if you actually go back and look at the race and you see what the gap between Hamilton and Verstappen was before the virtual safety car came out, and what the gap between Hamilton and Verstappen was when the final caution flew to bring out the safety car, Hamilton was further in front of Verstappen than he was before the virtual safety car. So from my perspective, I actually think that Mercedes called that strategy correctly, and to that point in the race had done everything right to put Hamilton in the best position to win the Drivers' Championship, which was their ultimate goal for that race. Now the second one, the safety car. At the point when the safety car comes out, Lewis Hamilton is leading by several seconds, and Mercedes has to make a call, knowing that with the number of laps remaining and how close it is and how far Lewis Hamilton had been ahead, there is at least a better than even odds probably chance that Max Verstappen is going to do the opposite. Whatever Lewis Hamilton does, Max Verstappen is going to do the opposite. If Lewis Hamilton stays out, Max Verstappen is definitely pitting. And if Lewis Hamilton pits, there's a really good chance that Max Verstappen stays out and takes the gamble that the race might end under caution. The other variable that they have the primary variable that Mercedes then has to weigh in is, what are the odds that the race is going to go back green, and what are the odds that the race is going to go back green with all of the lap cars being waved around, such that Max Verstappen would be right on Lewis Hamilton's bumper. In that scenario, if Max Verstappen is on Lewis Hamilton's bumper with fresh tires, or vice versa, if there's one driver behind the other with fresh tires and the other driver leading with very old tires, the trailing driver is going to win that unless the leading driver causes a collision. The speed differential is going to be enough that making a clean pass is not going to be a particularly difficult challenge. It's a relatively foregone conclusion. The one variable that was always at play throughout the race, of course, was that an incident between the two drivers that resulted in both drivers being eliminated from the race would favor Max Verstappen, since he came into the race with the tiebreaker in his favor, having more Grand Prix wins through the season than Lewis Hamilton did. So, in deciding that, Mercedes is looking at how many laps are left, the severity of the accident, how long they think cleanup is going to take, and trying to make a guess based on their understanding of the F1 rules, which should be the same, ideally, as everyone else's understanding of the F1 rules, whether or not there are enough laps, enough time to complete the cleanup, wave the lapped cars through, and restart the race per the F1 rulebook. As it turned out, Mercedes actually made the correct call in that situation too, because there were not enough laps for the accident to get cleaned up, and then, because you can't wave the lap cars through before the accident's cleaned up, you have to wait until the safety workers are clear of the track before you start sending cars around at speed to catch up to the rest of the field. I think everyone here can understand why that would be a dangerous situation to try to send the lap cars around before cleanup was complete and have them trying to catch up while safety workers were still on the track. So, the cleanup of the accident has to be complete. Then you have to send the lapped cars around, and as the rulebook states, the rulebook says the word any. Now, there's been a lot of discussion as whether any means all in this case. I think that if you go and read the rule in the context of the surrounding language, any does mean all. It says it sort of creates an all or nothing scenario that either all of the lap cars are allowed to go through, or the race control can make a call and say we're restarting without allowing lapped cars through. I don't think that the language really affords wiggle room on that point of saying, hey, we can send lapped cars through and then just restart the race with only some of the lapped cars being sent through, which was what they did. The reason I have an issue with that is that actually changes the variables and the rules as Mercedes was considering them when they were making their decision. So when they were making their decision, the possibility that some of the lap cars could be sent through at the last minute and then the race put back to green really wasn't even something that they were considering, because that was an unprecedented rule. It's not the way that the rules have ever been interpreted in Formula One in the past, and it's not the way that I don't think anyone, at least on Mercedes, and if folks are being honest, I don't think anyone in the paddock actually considered that to be an option prior to the race. So that's an issue. Now, the analogy that I'll put with this is a blackjack analogy, because I think that it applies. No analogy is going to be 100% perfect on every specific detail, but I do think that this will help clarify where I think the issue is with how F1, Formula One, and the FIA and Michael Massey administered the conclusion of this race, which is if you're sitting on if you're looking at a 13 or a 14 in blackjack or something like that, and you're deciding whether you're going to hit or stay with your cards, you're assuming that the bust point of 21 is a fixed number. So if you decide to hit, and then all of a sudden the dealer says, okay, hitting, and by the way, now that you've made your decision, we're actually going to adjust it, and we're going to say that 19 is the target number that you can't go over and you're trying to get closest to. Well, that's just sifted the odds. That's taken away two cards, a 7 and a 6, that would be good cards for you, and turned them into kill cards, bad cards, and it's reduced the number of good cards that you can hit that are in the deck. Similarly, if you decide to stay on a 13, and the dealer says, all right, well, now that you've chosen to stay, the target number is 23, well, then you've made a mistake, because that just, now there are no cards in the deck that would kill you. Even an ace, which would add 11 to your score, would just add 1 to your score to 14, and then you've got another decision, you'd be targeting a new number. But now that you've chosen to stay, you're effectively handicapped, eliminated from contention of beating the hand, because the dealer can go towards 23, and they only need to beat your 13 in that scenario. So I think you can understand why changing the rules or modifying the way that the rules are being interpreted or understood to be interpreted after teams have made the critical decision is problematic. And I think that blackjack analogy illustrates the problem with that. Again, at the conclusion of this video, I want to reiterate, this takes away nothing, in my opinion, from Max Verstappen's accomplishment. Both drivers entered the final race of the season tied on points. Both drivers were deserving champions heading into the season finale. I do think that it's a shame that the administration, or the way in which the FIA and Michael Massey specifically handled the conclusion at that race, has left a bitter taste in some race fans' mouths. But I hope that the review that the FIA is doing right now of the rule book goes well. I hope that they take these issues into consideration, and they clarify that section of the rule book, and honestly take a look at other sections of the rule book that may be written in a somewhat vague manner so that they can clarify them. The one thing that I'll add in conclusion for this is that I think that while there are problems with NASCAR's green-white checkered system to conclude races, the one thing about that system that I think is superior in this specific narrow regard to Formula One is that at least when the teams are making the decision of whether or not to pit under a late race caution, they are doing so with assurance, complete knowledge that there will be at least 2 green flag laps that the race will be restarted. There's a guarantee that the race will be restarted. So they're not trying to make a decision with an unknown variable or a moving target. I think that that makes the competition fairer for all teams involved. I know that there are some of you that may disagree. If you take issue with my analysis, or if you have a different opinion on uh, how that race played out at the end and why, please do feel free to comment. I do read all the comments on my videos. Um, so yeah, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you. If you like my content, if you like my videos, please do click a like button either on this one or the ones that you like, when you're watching them. Click subscribe if you like my stuff, and hit that notification bell so you can get notifications. I really am trying to stick to putting up one video per day. So yeah, and come over to twitch.tv/John Theodore Live. Click that heart, give me a follow, come check out the live show. We have a lot of fun racing and chatting and doing all that stuff. So thank you all very much, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace out, guys.